the question and answer booth tonight. Glad to see you all here. Please feel free to come have a seat. You can move up to the front row is available for anybody. There's rare opportunity to get a front row seat is available. We'll just start off as we do every night by asking, does anyone have any questions? We need at least one question to get started. It doesn't even have to be a particularly good one. You have one.
Do you believe in love? Do you believe in love?
Myself? Yes, I do. Not only do I believe in love, I believe that it's the very highest principle. Okay, see? It's the highest principle. There's a very broad body of literature called the Vedic literature. And from that literature comes all the teachings that we see all over India, you know. And honestly, most of the teachings that cover the East, like Eastern philosophy, is coming from those Vedas. It's all coming through one sage, Srila Vyasadeva. Sometimes called Vyasa, Vyasadeva, Veda Vyasa. Went way up in the mountains, a place called Badrinath. 5,000 years ago, they say. He sat in meditation. He accessed the vibration, universal vibration called the Veda, the knowledge. He was able to access it. Just like we can take a phone and access these vibrations that are going through like this area right now. Like if I wanted to pull up YouTube on that, I could pull up YouTube and all this information is floating around. So he had the ability to tap into this universal vibration called the Veda, download it. And knowing that this darker age was coming, the Kali Yuga, he was able to take that information, write it down, categorize it, edit it, kind of present it in a systematic way. But he understood that people are in different places. And people have different motives, different desires. And so he didn't want to just give just the highest principle because a lot of people aren't ready to swallow that. So he spoke on other levels as well. Like, for instance, some people look at this world and they think, I want to enjoy it. You know, like they wake up and they look out the window and say, the world is here for me to enjoy. This is my motive. This is what I'm looking to do. Let me see how I can do that. And he wrote books on how you could do that in a way where you begin to evolve. Because a lot of people just want to enjoy this world and they don't care about anyone else. They act selfishly. And in doing so, their path becomes darker and darker. Their knowledge becomes more and more covered. He wrote books called the Vedas, the Karma Kanda of the Vedas, the karma section, meaning how to generate good karma. And so it has a lot to do with ritual, expressing gratitude to the different gods and goddesses for the gifts of this world. You know, expressing that through ritual as well as being dutiful in life. We all have duties to each other, to society. Some of our duties are within the family, like the duty of being a good husband or a good wife, a good mother, a good father. Some duties are broader in society. So in those Vedas, he outlined a lot of duties, also as a way of cultivating good karma. You're very dutiful, you're very good, you're generous, you express your gratitude, appreciation, and then you'll accrue good karma and you can enjoy that good karma. And while you're doing it, you're kind of becoming a better person, you're evolving. So if you read those texts, it seems like the highest principle is to be dutiful. The highest principle is to show your gratitude. But then he wrote another section of books, and they call this the Jnana Kanda, the knowledge section. With knowledge, we can look at the idea of trying to generate good karma as a goal and understand it's not such a high goal. There are higher goals. Because if we're analytic and we really analyze our life and are reflective about it, especially when we look at it through the lens of the Upanishads, this next level of literature, then we could see that even if I accrue good karma, the pleasure that I derive is always followed by pain. because there are laws that are operating in this universe, like the force of time, that takes everything material away. So if materialism always leads to pain, then it's not so wise to make material enjoyment my goal. Aim higher. Realize that you're not this material body, you're not the material mind. You are spirit. You are a spark of spirit. Your nature is blissful. Stop looking towards external things to be your source of bliss, your source of happiness. Realize that it's in you all along. In pursuit of that, let go of everything material. Renounce everything. Leave your family, leave your society, go up into the mountains, find a secluded place, and try to go within. Analyze all your material desires. See the flaw in your logic in pursuing them. Break all those material desires, become free of material desires, and then find some state of peace called moksha. Now, if you read those texts, it says like, oh, that's the highest principle, renunciation and freedom. Right? But then he wrote another body of texts. Bhagavad Gita would be included. We could call this the Bhakti Kunda, the Bhakti section, the love section, devotion, love section, where he's saying the idea of being dutiful to get good things in this world, that was a step up for some people. Then you swung the pendulum to the other side and you said renounce all the things of this world, even renounce form, even renounce individuality in order to try to find peace. You kind of threw the baby out with the bathwater. You looked at the material world and said it's a world of form, it's a world of duality. So if it's a world of pain and it's a world of form and duality, well then freedom from pain, moksha, must have no form and no duality. If you read those Upanishads, you really feel like this is the highest principle. Now in the Bhakti Kunda, he's saying, no, there's a higher principle. The higher principle is divine love. There, it's a synthesis of the two. It shows how you can be dutiful in this world, but not for the material things. And how you can let go of the material things, but not just for peace, for a still higher goal. That ultimately the deepest bliss and happiness is found in divine love. And if we go to the very core of our nature, what we are underneath, we'll find that our very the ultimate dharma, the eternal dharma, the essential dharma that every living being shares is that we are made to love. We're made for love. That's what we're designed to do. And the most perfect central object of divine love is God, is the root of all existence. And when I say he's the root, what I mean by that is every single living being is connected to him, just like every leaf on a tree is connected to the root. And if you want to connect to any leaf on the tree, if you want to serve any leaf on the tree, then the best way to do that is not actually to water the leaf, but it's to actually to water the root. And so the Bhakti Yogi is recognizing divine love is the highest principle, recognizing that through divine love, you automatically let go of all the material things without, in one sense, without even trying. Right? Someone falls deeply in love, they start to forget about everything else. Right? And so that can happen on the spiritual level, that when one really understands God, when one really feels God in their own heart, they can feel a love so profound that they lose interest in material pursuits automatically as a corollary to divine love. And by connecting and feeling that divine love in one's own heart for God, one will naturally feel love for every living being, just like when you connect to the root, you connect with every leaf. So in this way, when I say love is the highest principle, it's the one principle that it covers everything. Everything. If you have divine love, you have material detachment, right? You have all the duty and all of that, all the goodness that's there in the Vedic teachings is there. All the detachment in the Upanishadic teachings are there. But there's something still higher, and that's love. Within that, there's humility. Within that, there's forgiveness. Within that, there's truth. Within that, there's compassion. All of that's in divine love. And really, the Bhakti Yogis and the Vedic literatures teach that our sojourn through this world and the cycle of births and death that we're all going through, the samsara, is just kind of like a Groundhog Day scenario where like we have a chance again and again to learn that divine love is the highest principle. And again, we have a chance to prepare ourselves to love on that level. And that means not necessarily letting go of any external thing, but letting go to the attachments to the external things, letting go of every drop of selfishness that's in us, so that we have a heart that's very soft and very pure and very capable of pure love, divine love. And once we achieve that, then the Groundhog Day thing is over, the cycle is over, and we can attain to our true nature and transcend it all. Is that okay? Okay, thank you so much. Good question. Good question to get us started tonight. Do we have any other questions? Yes?
Yes. So divine love is the highest principle. And the Gopis are sort of the greatest lover of Krishna. And Krishna is only interested in our love. So should I strive to be like to develop as much love as I can develop and at some point be a Gopi, or to be humble as a blade of grass? How do they work together?
Okay, very good. Yeah, do we want to should we stress, because now you're getting to the esoteric, the most esoteric aspect of the Vedic literature. The varieties of divine love, what they look like, the most intimate types of love that are described in the Vedic literature. And there we find those in the completion, the culmination, the essence of all the Vedic literatures is the Srimad Bhagavatam. 18,000 verses, full of different stories, and then it builds up to the story of Krishna's life. Many stories, or leelas, we could call them. And there we find that the girlfriends of Krishna, that they are the greatest yogis. They're called the Yogeshwaris. They're the greatest yogis because their minds are most fully absorbed, captivated, riveted in Krishna, in the mood of the most intimate love. So nothing tops them. So should we aim to become a gopi in our future life? Or should we be more humble than a blade of grass, thinking maybe that's beyond me? Right? Or do they both work together? Because ultimately, that goal is only achieved by the greatest humility. That being said, the other rasas, the other forms of divine love, the other varieties of divine love, they're all to be fully respected. To love God like a friend, like a dearest friend, is entirely beautiful and perfect. So it may be that we will wake up and snap right into one of those positions. Right? But especially what's said is that as we go deeper into this practice, particularly as we go deeper into reading Krishna's leelas, and as we go deeper into chanting Krishna's names, without us artificially choosing one, an interest in one of those varieties of love will arise in us naturally. And then we can focus and pursue that with intensity. So in one sense, we can let that, when that will arise, it will arise. We don't have to we don't have to artificially. If we pick one right now, it's likely that we're just kind of picking it according to our material conditioning. Right? We have a mind full of material conditioning. We may say, I think I would like to be this eternally, or I think I'd like to be that eternally. What we try to do is surrender fully, read Krishna's leelas, absorb Krishna's leelas, hear Krishna's leelas, and then naturally, coming not from without, but coming from within, that eternal nature within us will arise and speak to us, and we'll feel it profoundly. Is that okay?
Yes. Sorry for being not so humble, but there's such a big focus on being humble. And for me, in my junior state, I focus on the love.
Sure.
And
so I don't understand the contradiction. You're saying you want to focus on a particular love?
from my feeling is I don't want to be a blade of grass somewhere. I want to love Krishna in my interaction and not, you know,
What do you think it means to be humble like a blade of grass? Okay, okay, you're not sure. So then that's what we need to understand, right? In one sense, we're going into an esoteric realm here, but I'll try to keep it in a place where there could be some relevance to all of us in the conversation. There's, when one goes deep into this esoteric part of bhakti, there's how we understand these principles as a practitioner, and there's also how they play out in the divine, spiritual, eternal realm. And they're connected, but they appear different in each realm, right? So humility, there's no love without humility, right? There's no love without humility. Humility is within love. If you had a Venn diagram, you drew a circle, and inside that circle you put love, humility wouldn't be situated outside of it. Humility would be inside that circle. If you don't have if you have divine love, you have humility inside it. And if you don't have humility, that means you don't yet have divine love. Right? So humility is that essential characteristic wherein one becomes concerned about another, where the concern goes away from myself. Right? There's one saying, humility doesn't mean that you think less of yourself, but humility means that you think of yourself less. You understand? We're going around the world thinking of ourselves all the time. I want it like this. I want it like that. Why isn't it like this for me? Why isn't it like that for me? When you're actually have humility, it's not that you think of yourself less. It's not like you're less of a person. You're actually a more evolved person. And in that evolved state, you feel secure. You realize I don't need external things to change for me to be happy. My happiness is right inside me all along. So I don't have to be concerned with everybody showing me the proper level of respect, everybody glorifying me properly, and all the comforts that you know, appropriate comforts should be provided for me. And if they're not, then we need to make an adjustment. And I'm struggling against the way the world's moving, and that's creating more and more tension in my life and in my mind, and then I have no room for meditation and divine love. So humility means I'm fine just the way I am, right? It doesn't matter if someone's praising me or someone's criticizing me. I'm humble. It's just like everything is okay. And I'm thinking of others. Compassion is rising in me. I'm thinking of others. The desire to serve is in me. I want to serve others. That's humility. Okay, that's humility. Yeah. It's not groveling. It's not some pitiful thing. It's actually strength. It's not weakness, it's strength. Right? That works? Okay. Thank you. Then humility in the divine realm, in the ultimate divine realm, it means that your love is so intense, so fully intense, that the experience of the object of your love is everything to you. And they're reciprocating with the same feeling towards you. You know, we hear this in our expressions of love. You know, although in this world usually they're not entirely pure, but we hear expressions of love. You are my everything. You know, or someone proposes and they say, you know, I want to make you happy. I want, you know, like your happiness is everything to me. So here in this world, usually that's not entirely pure, but in the spiritual realm, you actually have that fully. We read about some of the expressions of divine love in these ancient literatures, and they may sound almost codependent, or, you know, like not entirely psychologically healthy. No, but that's actually the real health, is when we're so deeply situated in our own nature that we can entirely give ourselves with full vulnerability, and the object of our love is returning that entirely. And that's what we see play out in the Leelas of Krishna. It's love in its perfect state. Thank you, Marcus. Other questions? Yes, you remind me of your name, please? Albert.
We're talking about love and God. I was just wondering, what is the difference between God and love? Or is it the same thing?
I think, what is the difference between God and love? You see, it's a really interesting question. Because there are essentially, I was mentioning the broader Vedic literature. And there are people that study that literature and see it as truth. And they are called Vedantins. Right? They study the Vedanta. They want to come to the conclusion and understand the conclusion of the Vedic literature. And so among the Vedantins, there are essentially two schools of thought. There are two schools interpret those texts differently. Now, one school called Advaita Vedanta, to them, the highest principle is not love. To them, they see anything that involves duality as illusion. And if we just open up a dictionary and read what is love, it's going to say it's a feeling that one person feels for another person. There's the object of love, the person that's being loved, and then there's the subject of love, the person that's holding love in their heart for that person, right? So in a sense, it involves duality. And the Advaita Vedanta say, in truth, there is no duality, there is only one. And they were willing to say, and therefore love is just a temporary illusory emotion that goes through the mind. And it's something that has to be let go of in order to come to a higher platform of moksha or freedom, or peace. So they were kind of very stoic in their presentation of this, but they would hold to that strong. If you study these texts, they're presenting that as the, what's the word I'm looking for? The coherent way of analyzing it. And if you bring in the idea of love, they're going to say, no, no, no. With your knowledge, you're supposed to understand how those attachments are illusory and let them go and transcend. Then there was another school we could call Bhakti Vedanta, right? Bhakti Vedanta. That's saying, in one sense, the exact opposite. They agree on so much. They agree on so much. But they have a different idea of what the ultimate goal is. So they say, the Advaita Vedanta say, if you practice bhakti, if you're doing a puja and worshiping some deva or some god, do that bhakti. That's okay. That's a good thing. It'll bring you up to another level of awareness, elevate you from the lower modes of tamas and rajas up to the platform of sattva. But then when you got to get really serious, then you have to let go of any conception of form. You have to let go of any conception of individuality, me and you. You have to let go of any of these emotional conceptions and transcend to the oneness. The Bhakti Vedantas say knowledge is good. Renunciation, that's okay. That can be helpful, but you have to transcend that, right? You have to transcend the motive. You see, because pure love means there's no motive, no selfish motive. The motive that's there for the followers of the karma section of these texts is I want the things of this world. I want the pleasures and the prosperity of this world. And for the Jnana Yogis or the Advaita Vedantins, their goal is I want freedom from the sufferings of this world. I want moksha, freedom, right? So one wants the pleasures of this world, one wants to escape the sufferings of this world. The Bhakti Yogis say both are, in one sense, selfish or self-centered motives. And pure love is beyond that. Pure love is something more. But they'll say like this, and this is real important. Everybody with me? It would be, in one sense, it would be helpful if I had a big blackboard and I was kind of like drawing all this out. But I feel your attention, and it will require attention to work through this. But I'm feeling the connections. But if at any point it's unclear, just please raise your hand and I can try to be more clear. The Advaita Vedantins see this world as an illusion. And they think that the suffering in this world is, they say, just look at it. The forms of this world cause us suffering because there's the force of time within this world. So if we develop attachment for any form, let's say the form of our own body, or maybe the form of the body of a loved one, or maybe any material possession that we might have, whether it's a car or a home or anything else, if it's composed of matter, like our bodies or like our possessions, then the power of time is controlling it, is changing it, is ultimately destroying it. Right? So our bodies are destroyed, our possessions are destroyed. That causes pain. So they're looking at it, they're analyzing it and saying form causes pain. They're also looking at the individuality that's within this world. I have my own individual consciousness. You have your own individual consciousness. I have my own desires. You have your own desires. We're lots of people moving around, each one with their own individual desires, and we're all colliding with each other. That causes pain. There's so much conflict due to our individual consciousness, our individual separate desires. If we're going to have peace, we're going to have freedom, then there must be no form and there must be no individuality, because these are what cause all the suffering. That's how they analyze it, and therefore they see the highest goal is no form, no individuality, just oneness. I am that oneness. When I realize it, I feel it, and I'm free. Okay? Now, just as they see this as illusion, the Bhakti Yogis in the Bhagavad Gita will say that, yes, this world is illusory in one sense. It's like a reflection. And the example it gives is like a banyan tree. It says there's an upside down banyan tree that represents this world. And where do we see an upside down tree? In a reflection, right? If you're standing on one side of a pond and on the other side there's a tree, then the real tree is here and the reflection appears to be upside down. So they're saying we're in the virtual reality, we're in the reflection, we're in the upside down world. And in this upside down world, there is form, and there is individuality, and there's love. But there's also so much pain related to it. But they're saying that it's not the negation of form or the negation of individuality that is the goal. They say that that's kind of the neutral state. But there's something interesting about reflections. A few things interesting about reflections. One is that if there's a reflection, there's always a source for the reflection, correct? If I look in a mirror and I see something, I'm not looking at that thing, but I know that it exists because there can't be a reflection without the substance being reflected. So they're saying if this world is an upside down tree, then it's a reflection, then there must be a real realm, right? There must be a source that's being reflected. Not just, and it must have the same qualities. It must look like this realm, right? Not that it's nothing. Not that it's just light or just oneness. If there's form and if there's individuality in the reflection, then there must be form and individuality in the source, the spiritual realm. And there's another interest. Everybody following that? We're good so far? One more real important thing. That reflections look exactly like what's being reflected, except they're exactly backwards or exactly upside down, right? So in this world, there's form and there's individuality with suffering. And in the real world, there's form and individuality with no suffering. Right? And in between, there's kind of a neutral state. And that's what the Vedantins, the Advaita Vedantins, they think that's the goal. But that's just kind of neutral. Then there's beyond that, there's form, spiritual form that never deteriorates. Spiritual individuality without the conflict, where it's all harmonious. And there's a beautiful divine bliss in love that is our original state. That's the world in which we're meant to be operating in eternity. So to help illustrate that point, let me ask you a question, Albert. what is the opposite of being $1 million in debt?
Having $1 million.
Okay, very interesting, right? Having $1 million. Now, if this is being $1 million in debt, then we're not saying that the opposite is to have no debt. But that's kind of what the Advaita Vedantins are saying. But the opposite is really to have $1 million, right? So it's not like the opposite of being $1 million in debt is there's no money. And it's not that the opposite of materialistic love that has pain involved, that there's no love. But there's divine love. Like that. I'm forgetting the original question now.
The divine is not love, but there is divine love.
Yeah, excellent. Yes. Okay. So there are these two schools of philosophy. One is saying love is real, and you can have love for God, and God has love for you. And there's another one that's saying love doesn't exist, right? Love is an illusion. But then there's another school of thought that develops much later. And this school kind of tries to borrow a little from each, but it doesn't really work. You know, it's kind of contrived. You're trying to take all the beauty from the Bhakti tradition, but maintain the conclusions of the Advaita tradition. And so you want to involve love in it, but love doesn't exactly work if there's no two people, right? So then you kind of say, well, you become love. But where was love ever spoken about like that? You know. In other words, they just kind of warp the term to try to. I honestly don't feel like that's a coherent presentation of Vedanta. I think it's kind of a forced kind of mixing of the two that doesn't really. I can appreciate if a traditional Advaita Vedantist is just going to come out and say love is an illusion. Okay, I get where you're coming from, and I understand that how you interpret things in your tradition, and I can appreciate that you're accepting the whole thing rather than trying to pick something that you like from here and something like from the other one and blend them together. I can appreciate that more, even though in one sense it's the opposite of what my tradition teaches. Thank you, Albert. Okay. Other questions? Yes, sir. Your name, please?
Can we apply this divine love?
I'm sorry, could I just get your name?
Tice.
Tice.
Can we apply this divine love to other people?
Oh, yeah. Good question. Yes, absolutely. Can you apply this divine love to other people? The faith in bhakti is that it's really the only way to really truly love others. Again, if you have a tree and there's so many leaves on that tree and you want to serve a leaf on that tree, you could try to pour water on the leaf. But it doesn't really work that way. Really what you do is you pour water on the root. And so by connecting with God and understanding ourselves in relation to God, we can understand every living being in relation to God. And we can see every living being as God's energy. And we can see God within the heart of every living being. These realizations are going to take love to another level. And it's going to break the cycle of like artificial love, where like I see another person and I call it love, but really there's an idea that person is going to make me complete, which that other person can never truly do. Because you're already complete, you're just out of touch with it, but they're not going to complete you. But that's kind of a recipe for disappointment. But what two people can do together is they can kind of hold hands and move towards God together, help each other take their steps towards the divine together. And in this sense, they're actually serving each other. And love is expressed through service. So yes, love isn't only for God, but love is for God and through God for everyone. And yogis or deeply spiritual people from all traditions recognize this. For instance, and we were talking about this a few nights ago, in the Bible, in the New Testament, the disciples of Jesus approach him and they ask him a kind of the same, what's the highest principle kind of thing. They say, but their question is, what is the most important commandment? Right? And you would expect that his answer would kind of fall within the religious context of, well, there are 10 commandments that Moses came down the mountain with. So of those 10 commandments, which are all saying, don't do this, don't do that, don't do this, don't do that, right? Thou shalt not do this and thou shalt not do that. Which one of those is the most important? And Jesus was like on a much higher level of thought. He was beyond the religious and he was into the deeply spiritual. So do you know what his answer was? He said that the most important commandment is to love God with all your heart, with all your soul, and all your mind. And that's a very yogic kind of statement. And then he said, and to love your neighbor as you love yourself. Okay. So he circumvented the whole his idea was that if you actually have that love, if you truly have love for God, you will naturally love every living being. And if you love God and therefore love every living being, then all those 10 commandments, they're already included in that love. You don't even need to list them, right? Because when you love every living being, you're not murdering them, you're not coveting their wife, you're not this and that and the other. It's like you already have that. It's all inside that. So if you want to know what's the most important commandment, just love God. It's the same thing as there in Bhagavad Gita, where Arjuna is asking about all different types of dharma. And at the end of the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, Sarva dharmam parityaja. Don't even worry about all the dharmas. Let them all go and do this wonder. And mam ekam sharanam vraja. And just surrender unto me. Just reconnect with me. Then all the dharmas are fulfilled. You don't even have to think about them separately. So deep spiritualists always know how to go to the essence. They always know how to go to the highest principle. And when you get to the highest principle, it fulfills all the lower principles. They're all right inside it. So if you love God, you're going to love every living being. You're going to feel it. And you're going to feel it for real. And there won't be any of the hidden selfish concerns that kind of corrupt what we call love in this world. Okay? Thank you. Other questions out there? Yes, your name, please?
Camila.
Camila?
I was wondering, what do you think that lacks or is missing in someone that cannot build a long-term relationship? Is it humility or, I don't know, the capacity to love? What would be?
Now, I'm not exactly the kind of like columnist in the magazine that's like that gives love advice and that kind of thing. But I'll see what I can do from a Vedic perspective. Okay. So why can't people commit to a long-term relationship? I'm sure that there are psychologists that could give some important insights into this. But let me just look at it from a Vedantic point of view, just off the top of my head. One principle in Vedanta is there in Bhagavad Gita that the seers of the truth have analyzed that which endures is real and that which is illusory is temporary. Okay? So they're saying that if something is spiritual, it lasts. It doesn't deteriorate. It's eternal. And if something is material, it fades away. So if we just take that fundamental Vedantic tenet and we apply it to the circumstance that you're saying, why does someone appear to be loving, appear to be kind, appear to be interested, and it feels, and even they probably feel like this is a wonderful connection that we have, and then not long down the road, their interest in it fades away and they disappear. That's the question. And so I would say two things. One is what I just said, is that it's indicating that their interest is not on the spiritual level. They're not interested in your spirit. They're interested in something material about you. It may be the body. It may be some circumstance. It may be how you make them feel in a material context. But anything on the material level will have a relatively short lifespan. So that's one thing. There's also the gunas, or the modes of material nature. And the Bhagavad Gita is going to say that that which is in the lower modes, it tastes very sweet in the beginning and it tastes like poison with a little time. And that which is in the sattva guna, in the beginning it doesn't taste so sweet, but it gets sweeter as it goes. You know, I'll share something with you. Where are you from, Camila? From Brazil. Okay. I'm from the United States. And I'd imagine Brazil is probably similar in this way. In the United States, what's the highest principle? Do you know? Anyone know? Huh? Everybody talks about it all the time. The land of, well, but that's part of it. The land of the free. It's all about freedom. It's the highest value. We value it over everything else, and it screws everything up. We've elevated it to too high of a position, right? So freedom is what we're interested in. And so therefore, some of like the more traditional ideas from all kind of different cultures, including the Vedic culture, will seem very foreign or like very oppressive. For instance, and don't get upset with me for anybody saying this, arranged marriage, right? You talk about arranged marriage to an American, they're going to be like, absolutely not. They're going to be like, we have all these ideas from watching movies that we're going to meet this perfect person and we're going to feel these deepest emotions, and it's going to be incredibly sexy, and it's going to be incredibly meaningful, and it's going to be incredibly beautiful, and this beautiful life will be lived together because we're going to find that perfect soulmate. And don't impose any other idea. I mean, I'm going to go out and search for that, and I'm going to try to find it. That's our idea. And in India tradition, the idea was the parents with a greater level of experience, with a sober mind, and with deep care for the life of their child, is going to go out and arrange the best possible person that they can find for their child to be married to, knowing that if they marry someone good, responsible, kind, and if the two of them enter into it with the idea that we serve one another, that there will be a genuine affection that will grow out of that, right? I think it was in the Gandhi film, where I think, if I remember right, but I saw it like 40 years ago, so I'm not sure, but if I remember correctly, it may have been in that film. Maybe someone saw it and can confirm this. But I think he was being questioned by a journalist about Indian marriage, and kind of with that idea that it seems so oppressive or foreign, confining. And he was saying that in the West, you think that you fall in love and then you get married. And in the East, we believe that you get married and then you fall in love, right? So, but my point being is that we try to go out and find this dynamic, hot, sexy thrill, and we call it love, and we think that that's going to go on forever, and it doesn't. The thrill will definitely go. And for a lot of people, when the thrill is gone, because they think that's the success and that's what I'm looking for, if the thrill starts to disappear, they're going to go search for it somewhere else. Whereas in the Vedic idea is like there's a commitment to one another. And as the two, it might not be the sweetest thing in the beginning, but actually the sweetness in it grows as the time goes by, because one person's really dedicating themselves to the other. And you're feeling that, and you're appreciating that, and you're seeing deeper into the person all the time, and then you have love that will last. So, okay. So would you like me to arrange your marriage? Okay. All right. Thank you, Camila. Yes, Sarah.
So my question is also about love. I heard Guru Das say once, if you have anger against anyone on this planet about a person or something, and it stays in the way of your bhakti, in the way of your spiritual path, and that we should be humble, that we should be loving towards each other, towards Krishna for sure. But then we live in a world where all the rulers and all the people that have the power and that structure our world act in a completely different way. And I mean, we were reading about America and it shows it's in its best way right now, what's happening. And I was just wondering, like, how can we be compassionate and lovable also with these people who treat others the way they do and use the power they have the way they do, and how does, for example, political actions doesn't come in the way of our spiritual path by setting us up.
So in other words, if I'm going to develop deeply spiritually, I have to love Donald Trump, is what you're asking. Okay.
I think Ram Dass said once, like, he was the people that he hates, especially like politicians, on his altar to worship them and love them, but it's like, how is that even possible?
Okay. How can we love, if divine love and if the higher states of spiritual awareness involve loving every living being, how can we understand that when there are certain living beings who are cruel, who are at least let's say they're behaving in evil ways, how can I love such a person? Okay. So this is where it's going to involve first jnana, knowledge. That's going to be the first step. We're going to talk about it on that level first. But then it's also going to involve, when you want to get deep into spirituality, it gets kind of radical. If you never get to that radical level, at least when I say radical, I mean it appears radical to most people. But there's a radical level that we're all going to have to get to if we're going to go deep. The idea of putting the on your own altar the pictures of people that you really don't like, that's a kind of a radical thing to do. You got to take it to that radical level. So we'll talk about that in a second. But let's first talk about on the level of knowledge. What's going on with that person who seems to be so rotten, right? What is happening here? Like from the Vedantic viewpoints, from the within the context of Atma-jnana, understanding the nature of the self. And when I say Atma-jnana, it means understanding the nature of the self in relation to the body, in relation to the mind, in creation to the universe, in creation in relation to God. What's going on with a really rotten, evil, oppressive person? Well, the yogis will say that inside the body of that person, behind the mind of that person, you will find a spark of spiritual energy that is just as pure as a spark within any other living being. Okay? 100%. But their thoughts and consequently their actions are being filtered through a very warped mind. Okay? Their mind has been warped and shaped in a particular way due to their experiences and the choices that they made in the past. They have a warped mind. If you take a crystal, which is perfectly clear, and you hold a red rose very near it, then it appears that the crystal has taken on the qualities of the rose. Like the crystal looks like it's red, right? But as soon as you remove the rose, you see, no, the crystal's not red at all. It was the rose that was red. The crystal was always clear, but it just appeared red because it was in association with the rose. And so in a similar way, the self is always pure, but when when the impure mind or the warped mind is, when it's associated with or next to a warped mind, or when it's working through a warped mind, then it appears that the soul's warped. But that soul is never warped. So if someone is so unfortunate to have a very warped mind that makes them cruel and oppressive to other people, how does the wise person, how does the sage feel towards that person? They don't feel hatred for them. They feel compassion for them. How unfortunate that that pure soul, whose very nature is divine love, is filtering through this very warped mind and acting in ways that are harming other people and that are ultimately harming themselves. There's a sense of compassion that they feel. They don't feel hatred. They don't feel animosity. They feel compassion. Right? That makes sense? That's how they see. That's how they see. And because they reflect on that, they reflect like that again and again. They reflect like that even when it's directed straight at them. Right? Even when there's people with warped minds that are bringing animosity, not just out in general, but even when that animosity is directed straight towards them, they learn how to forgive. They learn how to feel a sense of compassion. And they even learn how to feel a feeling of love for their so-called enemy. And that's something that they cultivate. That's something that the world brings at them, and they don't say, why does the world keep bringing these people at me? They say, I need the world to send these people to me so that I can begin to practice what it actually means to love on the spiritual level. And through their practice of it, they get more and more accustomed to it. And the ideas that they're reflecting on, as we've just discussed, they go from the platform of theoretical knowledge. Okay, there's a soul in the warped mind, I know that. They go from just theoretical knowledge to deep realization. It goes from the platform of jnana, or knowledge, to vijnana, or realized knowledge. Or you could say it goes from knowledge, which is theoretical, to wisdom, which is realized. And now when they have that wisdom, when their knowledge has matured to the level of wisdom, now they're not even kind of like telling themselves and lecturing to themselves that that's a pure soul underneath the warped mind, even though it disturbs me. No. Now they're actually just seeing spontaneously the truth. You know, that this is an unfortunate person that's a pure soul that's working through a warped mind. And they feel nothing but love. And so that's how one can see. Now that idea is somewhat radical, right? Someone has to say, I need to get to that level. It seems irrational. It's not irrational, it's trans-rational, right? The rational thing, idea is if someone's not so nice to us, then we owe them nothing. And it's entirely acceptable for us to feel a sense of animosity towards them because they've crossed the line, right? They've crossed the line of behavior. They've crossed the line of etiquette. They've crossed the line of kindness. If they've crossed the line of kindness to me, then I have every right, even to retaliate, what to speak of, to feel a sense of, I don't like you. But the yogis are radical. They want truth. And because we've been so conditioned in illusion that they're willing to think and act radically to come to truth. And that means I will love my enemy. Even when it doesn't feel natural, I'm going to cultivate that feeling. I'll put their picture on my altar, right? Pray for them. Because I want the truth and nothing else. We need to be determined. If there's something in us saying, yeah, I don't want to go that far, that's okay. But we're going to have to get to the point where we're ready to do that. If we're going to come to prema, if we're going to come to that level of pure love. We don't understand love until we come to that level. We don't know what it means. When we actually learn what love is, you see, we think like, what? I just fell in love with someone. Really? What is it that you love about them? And then you say something about them that's different than anybody. Oh, they're like no one I ever met before. Right? That's not actually what love is. Love is when you love what's the same in everyone. Right? There's something there's a oneness in us on the spiritual level that never changes. when you love that, when you love on that level, when you love the soul and not the body and not the mind, but when you love the soul, then you're loving what's the same in everyone, and you're loving everyone. Now, if I love one, if I love on the spiritual platform, I don't love just one, I love everyone. If it's really on the spiritual platform. Otherwise, it's on the material level. I'm loving what's different about this person. Then I can, that's not what the yogis will call love. That's some kind of attraction. That's some kind of material affection. And that's something that's going to fade away. Right? Because what's different is on the material level is always changing. And so it'll fade away, it'll go. Okay. So are you ready to get radical? Okay, you're ready to get radical. You're ready for arranged marriage. Who's next? Anyway, is that all right, Sarah? Okay. Do you want to take that further, or we're good for now?
Maybe just a practical question. In the moment that I feel the anger towards that person, I feel the pain, how would the practice look like? Is it simply meditating on their soul, on the compassion? But how would I practice that love towards that soul in the moment that I feel all these very intense emotions?
You see that we just spoke about a process. It's a process of maturation. I was a few years back, I was asked to teach a course on the Bhagavad Gita that would last like 3 weeks, meeting pretty much every day for 3 weeks, which was something in all my years of practicing and teaching bhakti I'd never really done before. So I was excited about it, and it meant that in one sense 3 weeks is a good chunk of time, in another sense it's not enough time to really cover the whole Bhagavad Gita. So I wanted to read the Bhagavad Gita again from beginning to end, and I wanted to think really carefully about how I wanted to present it. What exactly from it did I want to present? What did I want the students to walk away with? Okay? And so I read it, and I read all the verses, and something occurred to me. This isn't from a commentary from a great acharya of bhakti, a great teacher, but it's what I saw in it, and I feel like it's a valid way of understanding the Gita. I saw that every verse in the Bhagavad Gita spoke on one of 5 different levels, and they're kind of a gradation. The first one is duty, okay? Duty. The second one is knowledge. The third one is wisdom. The fourth one is absorption, and the fifth one is love. Okay, and I'll explain that. The first one is duty. And Bhagavad Gita speaks quite a bit about duty. You know, if you ask a lot of people in India, what is the essence, what is the message of Bhagavad Gita, a lot of them will say, do your duty, right? This is the way your parents try to get you to do what they want you to do, right? They say, well, Arjuna did his duty. He didn't want to fight, but Krishna told him, you have to do your duty. It's about being dutiful. Go to school, get good grades, get a good job, etc., etc. But duty is there, but it's not the highest principle in the Bhagavad Gita. Love is the highest principle in the Bhagavad Gita. But duty is the first step in controlling the mind and being a yogi. Because your mind is telling you, I don't want to do this, but your duty is to do it anyway. Because it's the right thing to do. And so that's where self-control begins. Sense control begins. Self-discipline begins with duty. You understand? When I first became a monk, I was 21 years old. And I was given duties. As soon as I kind of like stepped into that role, I had a whole list of duties. What time to go to sleep, what time to wake up, how much to study, when to study, how much to meditate, when to meditate, what services I was meant to do. All these duties I was given. And in one sense, duty is going to be the easiest thing because we can do duty if we really want to. In other words, let's say I said, Sarah, your duty today is to wash all the plates and everything here. Okay? You could do that. It might be uncomfortable, it might be unpleasant, but you can decide, I'm going to do it. Like if I put a gun to your head and said, do it, you could do it, right? It can be done right now. Duties like that. So it's a good first step, but it's just the first step. After that comes knowledge, trying to understand things, trying to understand, why am I doing this duty? What's its value? Trying to understand truth. Who am I? What is this world? Who or what is the divine? How do they all relate to one another? What's the purpose of life? What are we doing here? What are we meant to learn? That's knowledge, right? And that's something that we can study and learn. Just like duty is something we can choose to do, knowledge is something we can choose to learn. So if I said, here's a book, I want you to study it. At the end of the week, I'm going to give you a test on it. If you fail, I'm going to kill you. You could say, okay, I'm going to learn it, right? You could just decide to learn it. But wisdom is something else. I can't put a gun to someone's head and say, become wise. You understand? It's not just a choice. It's something that has to be cultivated. So it goes duty, knowledge. Wisdom means all the knowledge that's there has to mature into wisdom, where it's not just something that you know theoretically. I know theoretically that behind the warped mind of Donald Trump is a pure spirit soul. I've heard it, I've learned it, it makes sense, and I know it. But if I haven't deeply realized it, then and if it's just remaining on the theoretical platform, then I still feel animosity towards him. So somehow that knowledge has to mature to the level of wisdom. The jnana has to mature to the level of vijnana. And that is done through reflection. You hear the knowledge, and then you reflect on it as you go through life. It's particularly powerful and transformational when you're reflecting in the moment of tension, right? In the moment when you're feeling that tension, you reflect on the truth. In this way, the truth matures to the level of knowledge, of wisdom. That makes sense? So you're asking me, how does it play out in my day? You feel that rising emotion in you of animosity. And in that moment, you reflect. You take a deep breath. You breathe out, you let go of that feeling of animosity, and you reflect on the truth, right? Maybe you have to do it once. Maybe you have to do it 10 times. Maybe you have to do it 100 times. Maybe 1,000 times. Maybe 10,000 times. We're willing to do that, right? Because every day we're going to have challenges in our life. Every day we're going to have tensions in our life. And we've got this life, and we're dedicating it to achieving that spiritual goal. And so I'm going to keep reflecting. I'm going to be determined that I'm going to keep reflecting on truth, even in those tense moments. And I'm not going to rationalize, and I'm not going to justify my own animosity. I will not rationalize my own animosity towards any living being. I won't allow that, right? When I feel like well, it's okay to hate this person. No, I won't allow that. I won't allow that functioning in my cognitive faculty. No room for that. In this way, one's training their minds to be consistent with truth, to be consistent with their own nature. And when the mind becomes consistent with one's own nature, then there's a union between the mind and one's nature, the mind and the self, and that union we call yoga. Another word for union is yoga. So we go from duty, which is something we can choose to do, to knowledge, which is something that we can choose to learn, to wisdom, which is something that we need to work very hard to get. And when we become wise, and we've let go of all the attachments in our life, and we've let go of not only the attachments, but the aversions. That I'm averse to that person. I don't like that person. I don't like the situation. When we let go, attachment and aversion are two sides of the same thing, right? So when we let go of all the attachments, and we let go of all the aversions, we're situated on that. Now we're a wise person, and we move through this world very gracefully. And the tensions that most people are feeling, we're free of those tensions. And the distractions that most people are distracted by, we're free of those distractions. And the need, the feeling of need to change something in this world for me to be satisfied, we've let go of all of that. We have contentment on that level. And in that content and peaceful mind, we're finally able to do what? Meditate. Absorb the mind. So duty, knowledge, wisdom, absorption. Now we can actually absorb the mind in what we're trying to meditate on. Otherwise, we're sitting here practicing meditation with no ability to absorb the mind. So the practice is almost ineffective, largely ineffective, right? Meditation is great, but if you can't absorb the mind, you're not going to receive the benefit. But once you do that background work, you know, this statement is attributed to different people. Sometimes it's been attributed to Abraham Lincoln, one American president. He may or may not have said it, but it's an interesting statement. He said that if you give me 5 minutes to cut down a tree, I'll spend the first 4 minutes sharpening the axe. Right? In other words, I can hack away at a tree with a dull blade and get nowhere. But if I spend my time sharpening the blade, then very quickly the tree will get cut down. So I could spend unlimited time meditating and getting nowhere. But if I put in the background work of developing a peaceful mind, right, by maturing my knowledge into wisdom, by reflecting on wisdom as I go through my life, then when I sit down to meditate, it's going to be quickly effective. I'll absorb my mind deeply in the object of my meditation. I'll have an inner transformation, and then I'll arise to the platform of divine love. That when I absorb my mind in the holy name, the nature of divine love rises quickly in me. When I absorb my mind deeply in Krishna's Leelas, then the divine love which is in me all the time is quickly awakened. The absorption in it purifies the mind. If the mind's not absorbed, it doesn't become so purified quickly. But if it's deeply absorbed. So duty, knowledge, wisdom, absorption, love. And if we're going to kind of like, this is my own belief, but let's say we had a chart and we're mapping out our progress through these 5 levels up to the point of divine love. My intuition is that for most of us, it would go like, okay, there's duty, and then quickly we go up to knowledge, and then we spend a long time trying to get from knowledge to wisdom. And then when we finally get to wisdom, we quickly go up to absorption and love. So that space between knowledge and wisdom may be a lifetime work. But we're patient, we're enthusiastic, we're determined, and we're also patient. You know, ready to keep working at it, keep working at it, keep trying. Because this one lifetime is a short. The yogi sees that they zoom out, and from the perspective of eternality, they see this one lifetime is very short. And so they're willing to put in that work. And when they feel that tension, and when they hear the latest thing on the news, when they feel that anger arising in them, at that moment they reflect. Okay. Is that okay? Okay, thank you. Yes, sir. Your name, please?
Money.
Again?
I don't know if this is a personal dilemma situation.
Okay.
So basically, I completely I've been attending your question and answer session the last 3 days, and you say the highest goal of life is basically your devotion towards God.
To love God.
Devotion towards God.
Yeah.
So for me personally, it's been like, I can feel the presence of God in everybody. I know that there is a oneness, but many places in life. But for me, when I think about God, it's basically it's a feeling of an energy. So if I cannot put like an image to it of any single, deity or anything like that. And so like how do I transcend and be able to immerse myself, because it's an energy I can feel, but I cannot like put myself like you understand what I'm trying to say.
I believe I do.
Channel it to a certain image or anything, but I can definitely feel
Okay.
for a long time.
Yeah.
So like how do I transcend?
Okay.
Personally.
This is a very good question. In other words, okay, we can understand the idea that connecting to God with love is the highest principle taught in the Vedic literature. But when I feel God, my experience of feeling God is I'm just feeling an energy, but there's no face on that energy, and therefore there's no feeling of love. Then we may be speaking of two different things when we say love. But okay, if we look at the entire Vedic literature, we'll find something very special. That the author of the Vedic literature himself identified one of his texts as being not only the essence of all the Vedic literature, but the essence of all the Vedic literature. This is how it's described in his own literature, the Srimad Bhagavatam. In there, you're going to get the deepest and most complete picture of transcendence, or of God. And in the second chapter of that book, it's describing what is the absolute truth, or what is God. And he says that there is one non-dual God, or absolute truth, that manifests in three features. Vedanti tatpadvidas, tattvam yajganam advayam, brahmeti, paramatmeti, bhagavan iti shabdite. He says that seers of the truth, the tattvadarshis, those that are seeing the truth, they've understood that God is one, but he manifests in three ways. He actually manifests in unlimited ways, but those unlimited ways fall within three categories. One is called Brahman, one is called Paramatma, one is called Bhagavan. Brahman means the energy of God. And particularly when we're speaking about it, commonly what we're speaking about is that energy that is beyond the modes of material nature. It's spiritual, right? And when one deeply experiences that energy of God, they feel something. Not exactly love, but what they feel is called, we could call it Brahman realization. Brahma, in the Bhagavad Gita, it's called Brahma Bhuta. It's this, one experiences something of their true nature. I'm eternal. Right? I'm not this temporary body. I'm not this temporary mind. I am spirit. Aham Brahmasmi. Right? I am spirit. The false identities that I'm temporarily playing as a role, like I'm a man, I'm a woman, I'm an American, I'm Indian, there's no truth in these. These are just temporary blips, but it has nothing to do with me. I'm beyond all that. And based on that, I can move through this world with a very even mind. I'm not shaken by the movements of this world. If someone's praising me, it's okay. If someone's criticizing me, it's okay, because I'm on the level of Brahman, which never changes, right? So when one is deeply connected with that feature of the absolute truth, Brahman, then one feels this peace. Okay. Then they say, sometimes this is described, that the sages have said, it's almost like you're looking at the same thing, but you're seeing it from a closer and closer perspective. Like, say you're on a train and you're going forward in the train, and in the far distance there was a mountain. When you're at a very distant place, you may not even know that it's a mountain. It may even look like a cloud. Or maybe you can identify it as a mountain, but that's all you can say about it. But then as the train gets closer, you can see it more closely, and you can identify what kind of trees are growing on the mountain. And, you know, oh, there I see there's a river coming down the mountain, or there I see there's a waterfall coming down the mountain. So you're closer. The closer perspective shows you more of the character of the mountain. And then as you actually reach the mountain, then you can see the mountain in full. You can see what the soil is like, what kind of animals are moving around that mountain. You know, all the intimate kind of, oh, here's a secret cave in the mountain, and here's this and here's that. Now you're up close and you can see its full features. You from the distant perspective, you understood its size, And as you got closer, you understood more and more about it. So they say that understanding the absolute truth or understanding God is like coming closer and closer and closer as you go from Brahman to Paramatma to Bhagavan. So the second feature, the next feature, the next closer, intimate feature of God, the more complete presentation of God is Paramatma. Brahman means I've transcended the dualities of this world. Paramatma means I know that there is a divine intelligence behind the movements of this world, right? And that divine intelligence is all pervasive, is within the heart of every living being, is in my own heart, is within every atom, and every atom is also within him. So God is in everything, and everything is in God, right? Brahman realization means God is everywhere. Paramatma realization is God is inside me, right? And inside you. And so when you come to Paramatma realization, not only do you have a steady, even mind, but you actually have a connection, and even a somewhat personal connection to the divine intelligence behind everything. You have a voice inside you of God speaking to you, and you can hear it, etc. That's Paramatma. And then the most complete presentation of God is Bhagavan, where you actually know God as a person. You can actually see the face of God. You can relate to God with love. You see now, I can see right in you right now, you said, right? Like this is where it's hard for me to kind of stretch. Do you understand this? And I understand that. That's fine. But I ask you to allow me to speak plainly. Okay? I don't believe there's any rational reason to accept that God can't have a personal face. And I think rather the opposite. God must have a personal feature. Because if we have it, then how could God not have it? Whatever we have because God has. If the sunlight has heat and brightness, then its source, the sun, must have heat and brightness. And similarly, since we have personality, since we can have form and a face, then certainly God must also possess personality and a form and a face. Logically, it makes sense. It's rational. But there may be a psychological hesitation to embrace that idea. And it's reasonable that the people that we've associated with in our life are the cause of pain, and to accept that there's going to be a person that we are not only dependent on, but ontologically and eternally dependent on, can be a hard pill to swallow. Right? So there's a hesitation. And so therefore our aversion can block our rationality. And we can say God cannot have a face.
I don't feel that God cannot have a face.
Okay.
The thing is that I cannot identify a face to this energy.
Okay.
For example, I see God in you. I see God in you. I can feel God in all of us.
Yeah.
So for me, that's the connection that I can feel.
Okay.
I see God in dog, in everything.
Okay.
In nature, in the wind, in everything.
Great.
But I can't put a face to it.
Yeah.
I can connect with the energy.
Yeah.
I don't know whether it's stopping me. Maybe it's a good thing that it's like this, but maybe it's not helping me transcend into the place of spiritual realm that I want to be.
Okay. Yeah. So to some degree, you can feel that there's a oneness, and you can feel a sense of detachment from that. That's wonderful. And on another level, you can feel a sense, at least some sense, that there is a divine intelligence that ties everything together, and that is within every living being or within every atom. So that's good too. This is arising in you, but you're not feeling it on the personal level. But there's something in you that wish you could. Yeah. Yes. So then the way that you'll get there, currently your radio doesn't tune into that vibration. Okay? But there is a way that you can get the information. You need to connect with another source that is on that vibration, and you need to hear its testimony. Okay? Let's say I have access to some information that you don't have access. Now you have the access through me, right? And so through those that have that information, that through that testimony, we can get the information that we need. And the most fundamental way that we do that is through the Shastra. The Shastra is the testimony of the great sages who had that, that vibrated on that level, that had that experience. If we can place some faith in these texts, or at least enough to hear them out with an open mind, then we can access that information. And the concept of the personal feature of God can become more and more rational, and then gradually you can begin to feel it as you're feeling the other features of God. It can come. And perhaps there's no better way than the study of Srimad Bhagavatam, especially the 10th canto of Bhagavatam, but actually every canto building up to that is as well is very important. So I believe that if you open yourself up to Bhagavatam, which is the essence of the Vedic literature, where that personal feature of God is highlighted, because the very first verse, the very first invocation is Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. I'm offering my loving respect unto Bhagavan, the personal feature, who is known as Vasudeva Krishna, the son of Vasudeva. It's coming out and declaring that if you want to understand Bhagavan, the personal feature of God, this is the book that's going to do it for you. So I would recommend the study of Srimad Bhagavatam, the hearing of Srimad Bhagavatam. Okay, thank you. Time? Okay. I think that's it for tonight. Thank you all so much. It's been wonderful spending more time with you. As always, at least 6 days a week, there will be, I'll be giving a class in the hall here at 9 a.m. tomorrow. We take Mondays off, but then we're back again. And thank you all so much. There's more kirtan. There's more prasadam. Please enjoy. Have a good time. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna.